So in this video, we're going to be working on simplifying exponents, the last two properties. So you'll see that you have something in parentheses, more than one item, to a power. And this just works like a distributive property. It says that you can take this exponent of n and give it to the a and give it to the b. So it says a to the n, b to the n. It also works over division. So if you have something divided by something to a power, you can distribute the a to the top and to the bottom. So here's our first example. 3 over ab cubed all to the negative 3. So I have a negative 3 on the outside, which means I'm going to take this and distribute it to everything inside. So there's 3 things inside, so the negative 3 is going to go to all 3 parts. So I have negative 3, negative 3, negative 3. Now, when I have a power to a power, we learned that acronym in the previous video, in the exponent review. A power to a power, you multiply. So that's power to a power, you multiply. If they're being multiplied, you add. So here, I have a little power to a little power, 3 to the negative 3. So I'm going to multiply those. So I have 3 to the negative 3 over a negative 3, and then b, 3 times negative 3 gives me negative 9. Now, when I have negative exponents, I can't enter negative exponents. They have to be positive, so I have to move them. So if it's on the top, move it to the bottom. If it's on the bottom, move it to the top. So this whole denominator, because it's negative, is going to go up to the top, and the whole numerator is going to go to the bottom. So I'll have 3 to the third, because once it moves to the bottom, it becomes positive. And then I have a to the third, b to the ninth. Now, sometimes in Hawks it will tell you can't put in an exponent on the numerator, say this key is not available. That just means it wants you to multiply it out. So 3 to the third is 27, and then you have a cubed b to the ninth. So if it's a smaller number, then you're going to want to multiply it 3 times 3 times 3. Alright, next one, I have 4, and then 4m to the fourth all squared. So notice the parentheses are just this part right here. So that means the squared is only going to get distributed to the things inside the parentheses. So I have 4 and m to the fourth. Each of those are going to get a squared. And then that 4 out front is just going to come down. So now inside I have 4 squared, which gives me 16. And then I have a power to a power. So I'm going to multiply. 4 times 2 gives me 8. And then I have a 4 out front. Now, once I've got that part, I want to go ahead and still simplify any numbers and letters. So simplify any like terms. So 4 and 16 are like terms. So I'm going to multiply those, which will give me 64 m to the 8th. Alright, last example. I've got 4x squared y to the negative 1 all to the negative 2, and then 4x negative 1 y all to the negative 2. So what I recommend you do first is distribute all your things to distribute. Just be very careful when they're negative. So I have to distribute to all 3 parts. Don't forget to distribute to the number as well. I'll have 4x squared y to the negative 1, and each one of those will get a negative 2. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. Distribute the negative 1 or negative 2 to all 3 parts. And notice I'm going to go ahead and put in the multiplication symbols once I distribute that sign, because a power to a power I'd be multiplying anyway. So it's just like the regular distributive property. Once you distribute in, you multiply if you already have an exponent there. Alright, so now I've got a whole bunch of negative exponents and some things I need to reduce. So I'm going to go through and reduce all of these powers to a power. So I'm going to simplify those first. So I'll have 4 to the negative 2 will stay the same, and I'm just working across the top. X, 2 times negative 2 gives me negative 4. Y, negative 1 times negative 2 gives me positive 2. 4, negative 1, and now I'm working across the bottom. X, negative 1 times negative 1 gives me a positive 1, which I don't need to write, and then y to the negative 1. Now that I've got that, I'm going to work on my properties. So I've got like bases being divided, which means I'm going to subtract exponents. Same thing with these, because those are both base 4. So I'm going to subtract the exponents. So for this one, I have negative 2 minus negative 1. Negative negative turns into positive. Negative 2 plus 1 is going to give me negative 1 on top. So I have 4, negative 1. I'm going to do the same thing with the x. So I'll have negative 4 minus 1, top minus bottom, which will give me x to the negative 5. And then the last one, 2 minus negative 1, negative negative turns to positive, so I'll have 2 plus 1, which will give me y to the 3, positive 3. Now I'm going to take any negative exponents and move them to the opposite. So if they're on top, move them to the bottom. If they're on the bottom, move them to the top. Well, only 4 and x are negative. The y's not negative, so it's going to stay up top. So the y to the third will stay up top, and then I'll have 4. Negative 1 will turn to positive 1, and negative 5 will turn to positive 5. So I have y to the third over 4 to the 1, x to the fifth. Just like before, I don't need to write a 1 power, so I'll have y to the third, 4, x to the fifth. And that will be my final answer.